Super Rugby this weekend, folks. Round 11 Super Round down in Christchurch with the opening of this new stadium. It's been a long time coming. It's going to be great to see the Crusaders playing in a venue which fits the status of the team. We're going to go through the lineups which have been announced, some of the kind of stats, squad changes, predictions. You guys can let us know your thoughts on how things are going to go. Tomorrow, Friday, the opener is the Crusaders taking on the Waratahs. It's 6th against 7th, which I don't know that many people would have called going into the start of the season, but it's certainly one where the Crusaders, who are on the back of a couple of losses over in Australia, could use a bounce-back win to celebrate the opening of the stadium, and it would do their campaign to secure that playoff spot a bit of a favour, whereas the Waratahs are in that chasing position, trying to put a bit of pressure on the Crusaders. Remember, they beat Moana Pasifika last week. They kind of had to arm wrestle the Moana boys through it, but they did finish with a bonus point, so it was comfortable enough in the end. The Crusaders lineup, the biggest call seems to be Lester Whaiganuku is in the number 7 jersey this week, so he's going to be on the side of the scrum. He's a big unit of a man. How well he plays on the flank will be an interesting call, but yeah, see if you can get that guy into any space around the fringes. And he loves busting tackles, so he's maybe taking on that hybrid role in the number 7 jersey. Noah Hotham's getting a start this week. Brad Nenor and David Havili are back in the midfield, so it's good to see a bunch of these Crusaders who have been missing a bit of game time back. There's still no Will Jordan, which is an unfortunate one because it would have been cracking for him as a long-time servant of Crusaders Rugby to be at the opening of this new stadium. But Cody Taylor is there, and yeah, should be an interesting one from a Crusaders perspective. Macca Springer was only back, I think, the first game of the season last week. He's still there on the left wing. He was looking pretty sharp, so we'll see if he can get himself into some space. For the Waratahs, they've changed their entire front row. All the bench guys are starting this week, so that's Kailea, Whainga'a, and Amone are all starting. So it's a bit of rotation from the Waratahs coach. Sid Harvey has been the kind of standout guy of this Waratahs season, the rookie who's leading those Rookie of the Year kind of voting standings. He's been mostly playing fullback, but he's on the left wing for this one. And Jorgensen's at fullback, which is unusual, but they may chop and change throughout the game. We will see how the kind of guys position themselves. Otherwise, the squad is pretty stable. Charlie Gamble's still there. Pete Samu, very familiar to Crusaders fans, he's there at number 8. They've still got the veterans of Gordon and Debrasini at 9 and 10. But, yeah, Crusaders are pretty big-time favourites at home. They need to get their line-out right. It was a little bit of an issue last week. They need to keep the penalty count down, but they've got the squad, surely, to celebrate the opening of the stadium with a big win. Waratahs will need to do more of what they did last week. They'll need to score a bunch of tries. They'll need to miss fewer tackles. They missed 34 against Moana, and they'll need to keep winning the turnovers they did. But as I said, underdogs, Crusaders favourites by 15 with the bookies and 12 with the rugby forecast algorithm. No horses. They always get the horses to kind of gallop around the stadium prior to the start of the match, and they came out like 2 weeks ago going, oh, whoops, no horses. A lot of Crusaders fans will be pretty disappointed about that because that's one of the things the kids love, right? The kids love the extras sometimes more than the game. Like recently, the Blues have been having like bouncy castles and stuff at one end of the game, and my kids enjoy that more than watching the game. They want to go get some hot chips and bounce around on a bouncy castle. So no horses may seem trivial, but I bet the kids love the horses. Probably some of the adults too. So yeah, no horses galloping around the stadium pre-match. Seems kind of dumb. Hurricanes Brumbies is the biggest game of the week, I think, in terms of the positioning of the guys on the table. Maybe that in the Blues and the Reds game, but the Hurricanes and the Brumbies both hurting after losses. Last week, the Hurricanes lost that extra point thriller against the Chiefs to drop to second on the table with a game in hand, and the Brumbies, really unexpected loss up against the Drua. This is on the Saturday, by the way. So yeah, both sides in terms of their ambitions. The Hurricanes to finish top, which in Super Rugby is such a massive deal. And for the Brumbies to finish top 3. Really, really important game. Canes are going to be favourites because it is in New Zealand for sure, but it's kind of a neutral-ish one. So for the Brumbies, probably better than going to Wellington, to be fair. The Hurricanes have rotated a wee bit. Tuitupu is going to start in the number 2 jersey. Braden Yose, who's a dynamic ball carrier, he's there at number 8 alongside Karifi and Flanders in the back row. Whenanganofo has been the star of the show in terms of his try-scoring record. He's still there on the left wing. Morby's on the right. So they got some attacking-minded backs in that back three, including Harkin. Geordie Barrett was busy around the park last week, topped the tackle count for the Canes, along with Karefi, topped the carry count, although last week's game was a really hard one to get go-forward ball, so he'd like to get a bit more in that regard. But yeah, they've also rotated the front row a bit, so Almua, Numia, and Tosi on the bench for this one. We'll be looking to add some punch in the second half. Lakai is likewise on the bench as well. They did win a lot of turnovers against the Chiefs last week, did the Canes. They had like 11 of them in a game which was, more defensively orientated and, kind of kept the try scoring lowish rather than a kind of 80-point game. For the Brumbies, as I said, man, they dropped so much ball last week. 29 turnovers conceded is a horrendously high amount. They'll be looking to not blow as many chances because they missed some sitters against the Drua. And it cost them. They'll need to be much, much better against a much, much higher ranked side in the Hurricanes. They, on the other hand, have kind of kept things stable. Larkham, who's obviously backing the boys to turn those skill errors around from last week. Muirhead is in on the right wing for Sapsford, who drops to the bench. Sapsford and Meredith were one of the kind of combinations who blew an absolute sure thing of a try. And Rory Scott is in at number 7, up from the bench as well. But otherwise, she's pretty stable. Slipper, Pollard, and Alalatoa, all Wallabies front row, although it's been under a little bit of pressure in recent times, so they'll need to up their game in that regard. But yeah, Lonergan, Meredith, Tom Wright, his second game back. See if they can get into the game and cause the Hurricanes guys some problems. Predictions say no. The Hurricanes are 13-point favourites with the bookies and 20-point favourites with the algorithm, so predicted to bounce back pretty sharply. And then the other Saturday games, the Reds taking on the Blues, so both sides in the playoffs. The Blues scored a heap of points against the Highlanders last week, but conceded a ton. That's 2 weeks in a row the Blues have conceded a heap of points, and they missed some tackles last week. Tackle percentage of 78 has to be the worst of the round last week. Anything below 80 is getting pretty terrible, which is strange because the Blues largely throughout the season have been a lot more defensively solid. So 2 weeks in a row, ship some points. We'll need to be much better against the Reds, who are off the bye. So it could add a bit of kind of fresh punch. And remember, it's neutral-ish being in New Zealand, but it's not Eden Park. So maybe the Reds will find it a touch easier. Ben Ake, who got a try from the bench last week, he gets a start at loose head. And then all the veterans are there for the Blues. Tupolotu is still there. It was great to see him back last week. Papali'i is still there. Satutu was there. Satutu was our top tackler and top carrier last week. He gets criticised for being lazy, but anything but last week. Peter Aki, another veteran, is up from the bench at number 12 this week. And Cade Banks and Cole Forbes are a bit of a rotated wing combo. There's still no Caleb Clark. Hassan Sullivan is still there at fullback. And Stephen Perofeta, finally we get to see that guy back in action after missing quite a few games. He is there on the bench. Honestly, scored 7 tries last week, and mostly through the forwards. Conceded 6. We'll need to tighten things up a little bit as we head into the playoffs. For the Reds, as I said, off the bye, they've had a chance to rest and rotate a little bit. Nongor, the Wallaby, is up at tight head, and Harry McLaughlin-Phillips is going to get a chance to pull the strings at number 10 for them this week. Daugunu is potentially the danger man in the back line. When they played the Crusaders a couple of weeks ago, had over 100 metres on the carry, busted a few tackles. So, yeah, if the Blues give him space out wide, you know all about him from his time at the Wallabies and at the Reds. And then the back row of Bryle, McCright, and Wilson. That's pretty impressive. Like Bryle, to be fair, he's not the Wallaby of the bunch, but he's been really impressive. Great at line-out time, very busy around the park. So, they tackled well and won turnovers against the Crusaders. They'll need to do the same against the Blues, one would imagine. This game's predicted to be a bit closer than the others, in that it's by 9 with the bookies and the algorithm. So it's within single digits, which is more than I can say for pretty much every other game this week. Then we've got the 2 Sunday games, which are predicted, I guess, to be a little bit more lopsided. The Highlanders up against Moana, Pasifika, 2 of the sides down towards the bottom end of the scale. The Highlanders, I feel like, are a little bit underperforming. I don't know, they've lost like 4 of their last 5, and they've only beaten... Who was it they beat? Was it the Drua at home? Yeah, they've not had a great winning run this recent set of games, but they've showed glimpses. There's no Tangitau this week. He's still recovering from that big head knock he took last week. But man, they scored 40 points against the Blues at Eden Park. So despite the fact that it's not at home, This is an absolute must-win and probably must get a bonus point one for the Landers guys if they are going to get back in the race. Vikena and Ma'u are starting, kind of up from the bench in the number 2 and number 3 jerseys respectively. Thomas Lavanini, the big Argentinian, he's back after a bit of an injury layoff. Tito Harris on the left wing, he scored a try from the bench last week, so he's up from the bench to take Tangitau's spot. Jonah Lowe's back. Ratu Matavuki Neepkins is back at fullback, so they got some players back, which maybe means they will be able to meet that kind of potential where they see themselves at. But I mean, Adam Lennox at number 9, he was potentially the star of that show for the Landers, wasn't he, last week? A couple of tries, busted 8 tackles, which is the same as Tavatava Nawai. Pretty impressive from the young 9. And, Cam Miller can kick the goals at 10. So, yeah, busted 28 tackles against the Blues. We'll see what they can do against Moana. Moana, they have made a few changes. Mataval, who scored a couple of tries last week at number 9, is obviously out because he went off injured last week. So Tomatini is up from the bench. Alan Craig and Jimmy Tupou is an all-new second row. They'll be having to get through some tackles. But the rest of the squad is kind of stable. It's a shame. Still seems to be a few guys out injured. Glenn Vaihu is maybe their best kind of tackle buster, but there's still no Tavita Offa, who had been the kind of star of the Moana outside backs thus far this season. The Japanese international Harada is back on the bench. Hasn't played for a few weeks, so a few more Super Rugby games to go for him before the season ends. Against the Waratahs last week, they did show glimpses. They had a couple of yellow cards, though, which did not help them. Their line-out struggled a wee bit, but boy, can they bust some tackles, so they'll need to be doing more of that against the Landers. But 16 points with the bookies and 19 points with the algorithm. Moana are big-time underdogs for that one. And then the final one, Chiefs up against the Drua. The Drua can win away. They did it last week against the Brumbies. But as I said, the Brumbies blew some tries. But the Drua will need to keep up that defensive pressure they had last week. It's hard to see the Chiefs, after beating the Hurricanes last week, dropping a game. But man, in professional sports, you really never know. The Chiefs have rotated a little bit, like there's no Tokiaho this week. He seems to have been rested, but Vai is back. Tom Oifalau seems to be also rested, but Sinkinson, who scored a really cracking try last week, he's up from the bench onto the left wing. Titi, who was the maybe game-changer guy last week from the bench, he gets a start at number 8, so he'll be looking to have a good run from the starting lineup. And, he's talked about his injuries. He wants to kind of get a good injury-free run. And then Damian McKenzie, 60 metres, 2 line breaks and 9 defenders beaten last week, was another kind of game-changing player. He'll be looking to put on some points against the Drua guys. Maybe a good shout for your fantasy sides. 6 line breaks against the Hurricanes last week the Chiefs had in a game which wasn't all that kind of open. Yeah, it's good. It's good for them heading into the playoff period. For the Drua, their line-out still struggles, but man, they can win some turnovers and they'll need to do the same, you would imagine, against the Chiefs. Lomani is back after a long injury layoff, so he is in there at number 9. Voasese is back in, starting this week, and likewise Ndongie in the tight head jersey. And then there's a debutant, Maika Tuitubo, in the number 13 jumper, so big congratulations to him. Gets to have his debut in this new stadium down in Christchurch. That'll certainly be a memorable one for him. Drua Sese, Mateele on the intercept last week, got a try, back 2 in the game against the Brumbies. Rakura on the right wing. Yeah, and it's Salawa, tackle machine. So, Drua big-time underdogs, but as I said, if you can go down and do it in Canberra, this is a neutral venue game. Might be a bit brisk down in Christchurch, but Canberra's not exactly known for its heat. So, yeah, hopefully the Drua give it a good crack, but 23 points say the bookies, and 29 says the algo. They are predicted to struggle in this one. But yeah, hopefully it is a cracking weekend of rugby with this new stadium down in Christchurch. Thoroughly looking forward to it. I'm going to be doing a live stream of the opening game with Tony from Distracted Sports. We'll be sitting down to watch the game and react to it and whatnot, so hopefully that's a bit of fun. Join us if you are sitting at home watching the game at that time. But yeah, you guys take care of yourselves, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.